Okay, let's make a melody. I think I want to make something. Well, I've got like a list of things that I want. I want a piano, I want a guitar, and then I think I want to make things like dark and cinematic. So we'll see if I get all those things checked off the boxes as I make the melody. So what do I want to start with? Let's maybe. Well, I've got the BPM at
Maybe pick an
173.
instrument.
I might just load up a couple of those sounds I was just talking about. So maybe let's grab a piano. And then I'll open a second instance of Flex, and then we'll find a
I think
guitar. And then
that'll
I can
be it
always
for now for the sounds, and I might add stuff later.
So let's start with a guitar, and I want to get like something repetitive, but kind of dark. So let's maybe pick a key. So let's go with a minor key, and then I'll just kind of pick one G sharp minor, sure. So let's do like long, slow chords, maybe. So something like this. And then maybe we can make it a little bit more exciting and take like, I don't know, maybe the bottom notes and just like shift them over. And then make it a little bit slower. Yeah, something like this. And then we can just repeat this throughout. And then we'll come back and make this sound a little bit more realistic later. So let's go to the piano and see if we can't build out like a chord progression with the piano. For starters, I'm gonna copy these notes because these are gonna be the main notes that I'm gonna worry about here. And then let's do the same thing with these. So move this one down, move this one up. And then maybe we can make the piano a little bit more complex. Since the guitar is going to be relatively simple and just repetitive the entire time, maybe we get a little bit more complex with the piano. Okay, maybe we go like bum bum or bum. Oops. Bum bum. That's not exactly what I had in mind, but that also works. Maybe we go dun dun, and then maybe this time we do go up. So we change the notes a little bit. So this comes up, and that's already there. I don't know if this is going to sound good or not. Let me move this down to an E, and I think it will. That almost works. I kind of want to move this one late and then just make it very brief like this. That sounds better. Okay, and then just repeat the entire thing. And then maybe we make it slightly different over here. So maybe we take some of these notes and we move them a little bit to make make it a little bit less boring. So maybe we do like an inversion. So we just take some of these and pitch them up an octave. Maybe that's the difference. And then this one can get like super crazy high. So the only difference really is the pitch. There we go. Okay, so it's really not much different in the second half. The only difference is I did a few inversions, meaning I took some of these notes and just pitched them up an octave. And then all I did was take an existing chord and just like cut it and make it repeat, basically. That's the only difference. that's really pretty. I like that. Okay, now I'm going to repeat it, and then I think I do want this one to be different, like just completely different as far as the notes are concerned. Excuse me. Maybe we just pitch everything up. Like visually, what I'm seeing is these notes. I want these notes to still be together because that's kind of what's causing that like darkness and that tension down here. So maybe I just shift these together until they're on these notes, and then I do the same with this. And then we can either leave the root note, the G sharp, the same, or we can change it. So how far did I move these? I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I went 7, I can do the same with these, and maybe it'll work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's in key, so it might work. Let's see. That's pretty. I like that. I think I want to layer this with another sound. So I'm going to pick that viola and copy the pattern. Okay, I think what I'm going to do now is make everything sound a little bit more real. Because currently everything is like hitting right on the grid, and all of the notes are hitting at the exact same velocity. So let's start with the piano, because that just happens to be the first thing I have here. And so to make this sound a little bit more realistic, like a person is playing it, I'm going to do a couple of things. So I'm going to hit Control A, so that highlights everything. And then I'm going to hit Alt R. I don't know what the buttons are on Mac. So if you're on a Mac, I apologize. I don't know what the shortcut keys are. So hit Alt R, and that pulls up the randomization. These are the settings that I like. I like to not mess with the panning because I'll pan things later myself typically. But I do randomize like the velocities a little bit. And a little bit less so with the release, but yeah. So randomize the velocity, make sure it's on bipolar. If it's not, then it won't it's not quite as like random. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but I typically keep bipolar checked on because I like the way that it distributes the randomization. Hit accept. And then if we want to make them sound more like a person is playing it, one thing you want to do is kind of make the notes imperfect with the timing. So you want some notes to be a little bit early, some to be a little bit late, because when a person plays, they don't play like a computer. They don't play perfectly on the grid. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit Alt Q, and that pulls up the quantizer menu. And then you want to select one of these. I like the results I get from dotted eighth notes because it's different enough from the original grid, but not too different. So, but really, you can pick any of these and just play with them until you get one that you like. So I like dotted eighth notes. So let's do dotted eighths. And then here, I'm going to exit out of this and zoom in so we can see better. So hit Alt Q, dotted eighth note. And then if you have this little dial all the way up, you can see that all of these notes are now right on that dotted eighth note grid. In fact, right here where this 9 is, that's where the old grid was, and you can see that it moved all of them over to the new grid on the dotted eighth note, okay? And if I pull this all the way down, it's like nothing has happened. It's like my notes are exactly where they were before, okay? So if you put this somewhere in between, what that does is it kind of randomly moves notes, forwards and backwards to make them early and late. So just kind of, I like to have it pointing to where it says start time. I like the results from that because it's not too extreme. But yeah, you can play with this a little bit and get something you like. Hit accept. And then, as you can see, these notes haven't been moved at all. These have all been pushed up early. These are all late. So yeah, it moved them forwards and backwards for us. And then if we want to accentuate that and make it sound even less robotic, because currently it's still going to sound a little bit robotic because everything is moved the same amount, if that makes sense. So to fix that, let's just grab some of the notes. So I'm just going to kind of select some of these. It doesn't really matter. Okay, just some of them. And then move them back a little bit. Unhighlight some of them. And then move them a little bit more. That way there's a little bit inconsistency with how they're moved. And then you can do the same thing and push them forward if you wanted to. And then one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to strum everything. which means none of the notes are going to hit at exactly the same time, which again is to try and make it sound a little bit more human, because a person hitting piano keys isn't going to hit every key at exactly the same time. So to mimic that, we're going to hit Control A, and then we're going to hit Alt S, and you can play with these settings to get the settings that you like. I like to have it about if we zoom in, we should notice everything's like strummed, everything's kind of like randomized a little bit. Some of the notes are a little bit forwards, some of them are a little back, and we can make that even more so if we want to. But yeah, so this is just to kind of make it sound a little bit more like a person has played these keys. So let's listen to it. Another warm. Okay, so let's do the same thing with the other instruments. Actually, before I do that, let me pan some of these lower notes. So I like to pan a lot of the lower notes on the downbeats. So the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7, the 9, and the 13. And the reason I like to pan those is because oftentimes my kicks and 808s land on those notes. If I pan these notes to the sides, the idea is some of those lower frequencies are now being panned left and right and not sitting in the middle, which is where my bass and my kick are going to be. So hopefully there aren't as many things in that middle space competing for sound later on. It's also more fun to just listen to notes that bounce left to right. If everything is just sitting in the middle, it's kind of boring to listen to, or it can be. So let's save this pattern and then do the same thing for the others. So let's go to the guitar. So again, we're going to Control A, and then I'm going to hit Alt R to pull up this randomization. And then again, you can play with the velocity and release. I don't like to mess with the panning because, again, I'm going to mess with the panning myself. So hit Accept. And then we're going to randomize the timing. So hit Alt Q, pick a grid. I like the dotted eighth note grid. Okay, and then just kind of put this somewhere in between. Hit Accept. And then if you want to make it sound even more real, just kind of randomly select some of these. It doesn't really matter. And then move them back a little bit. Unselect some of them. Move them back a little bit more. On top of each other, but let's listen to it. Okay, let's take some of the panning, and let's do the opposite of what we did before. So I'm going to take the 1, the 3, the 5, 7, 9, the 11, 13, 15, and we're going to pan them the opposite direction. And the reason I pan things the opposite direction, one of the reasons why, is to make the notes a little bit easier to hear and distinguish from one another. Because if you're listening, if you hear a note on the left and on the right, it's going to be easier to hear them like separately as separate sounds and like distinguish them. And again, this also pushes some of those sounds out to the sides so that later on my bass or my 808 or whatever isn't competing with other sounds. So I don't think I moved this one for whatever reason, but I guess that's okay. So let's save the pattern. And let's do the same thing for this. So Control A, Alt R, Control A, Alt Q, hit Accept, and then I'm just going to move some of them a little bit. And then I don't think I'm going to pan these notes as like I did for the others, but I'm going to copy and paste this so it's the same. Okay, so because my piano is so low in frequency, see how it's basically all low frequency down here? I'm going to separate it. So I'm going to pull this knob down until it's at 95%. That's fine. Good enough. And that's for a similar reason as what I said before. I want to push those lower frequencies out to the sides so that basses and 808s and stuff later aren't competing with other stuff. Okay, I think I want the guitar to have a lot of delay on it. Okay, now I want to EQ these strings a little bit because there's some frequency in here that I'm not a fan of. Okay, let's listen back to listen.